rest, relationships, and healing. Another big topic, and it's very relevant because so many relationships got damaged, especially in the last couple of years, but it's happening all the time as well. It's a serious thing. The theme this week is forgiveness, and we continue looking at the story of Joseph.
And yeah, just because he was sold doesn't mean that his story ended there.
Well, sure. Okay, how realistic do you think it is to be able to forgive something horrible in our lives, like violence and even abuse?
It's hard. It's hard. There is a damage, and even there is a bleeding in the soul when it comes to something violent, being violently abused and rejected. It affects the whole life and even the future of that person. The worst of all is that it keeps you as a prisoner, and you remain a victim of that past moment. And what you need in a moment like that is healing and closure. And I would say the healing comes through forgiveness. I like what the lesson says, a nice definition. Forgiveness is the willingness to abandon your right to resentment, to condemnation, and to revenge toward the offender who acted unjustly. But where do you abandon trash like that? Who wants it? The answer that I would give is we can turn our resentment and our desire for revenge over to God. He understands unfair treatment. He understands unjust abuse and torture. He knows how to handle that because of Christ. He handled me, my evil contributions to his suffering. Can't I do the same as much as to turn over to him someone else's abuse? It is as real as life.
And I don't think that you are saying to turn our anger toward God, but rather to bring our hurt to Him, right? This is a huge and sensitive topic, and sometimes professional help may be needed to overcome big traumas, but we're reflecting on the core principles here. So, our natural desire is for revenge, but this keeps us victims and it hurts us more. Forgiveness helps us to change the perspective. It's more about actually us than whoever we forgive. What are the key points that you see in the lesson that makes forgiveness possible? I mean, how does it work?
I see, first of all, Joseph being already in peace and in rest when his brothers arrived. However, something very interesting, he took his time in discovering where do they stand on the point of evil actions that they had executed. And I believe they were regretful. They were looking for forgiveness already. Then Joseph humbly embraced them. He had a hug with his brothers and he cried with them. Imagine this picture. All was possible, by my opinion, because Joseph believed that his life was only a part of God's big plan to help save his family, to help save Egypt and many more other nations from the famine that was in the land. Not only, but because also his father and his grandfather were given a promise to make them a great nation. Joseph believed that, and he was standing strong in God's promises. He was acting like this is just an obstacle, not a fatal stop on the way to successful life.
Theory is one thing, but it's much harder in practice. So here are some points that I took. We should always remember that we are forgiven as well. We are also offenders in the relationship with God and probably many other relationships as well. To forgive, it means that we have to admit that we hurt. And this is not easy. We need to go through the process. Forgiveness is also a choice, not a feeling. So even when we hurt, we can make this choice. Forgiveness is done first and it's unconditional. It's not a result of changed behavior. We were forgiven first by God before we were even able to ask for it. Now, this doesn't mean that there will be no consequences, though. About Joseph and his brothers. They were happy and they lived in forgiveness for several years, but when their dad died, the brothers got scared that maybe the forgiveness was just because of their father, and now when he is gone, they will have to pay. Some wounds take time to heal, and sometimes we need refreshers for our forgiveness, as Joseph and his brothers had. Okay, what are Setsu your thoughts on rest and forgiveness?
I would conclude that relationships are not easy. The closer they are to us, the more intimate they are to us, the harder it is sometimes. We become more vulnerable even. What's important is that we don't lose our personal focus on the main goal, Christ, because he would lead us forward and he would unite us together.
And we'll continue next week with the study Free to Rest.